Thank you all so much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aubrey Menard. I'm the author of the Young Mongols book, which started many years ago as a video series, and we were lucky. I was lucky when I was producing that video series to have an opportunity to meet Batjin and talk to him, and he participated in our kind of end of series panel, which left off with all of us talking about our hopes for the future of Mongolia in different ways. And I left Mongolia then, but I, of course, never stopped thinking of Mongolia or working on Mongolia things, which is how I ended up all these years later writing the Young Mongols book, which I'm so excited about. I hope that you all have a chance to pick it up at some point and read it. It's not physically in Mongolia because it's very difficult to get anything physically anywhere right now because of the coronavirus and shipping restrictions. But I'm working on getting a Mongolian translation published. But for now, you can get it on Amazon and read it on your computer or on a Kindle or on your phone. So that option is available to you. So just to introduce Batjin a little bit, and I won't get too deep into it because we're going to talk pretty in depth about his work and Temujin's work in the event today. Batjin is the founder of Temujin Academy, which started out as kind of like a college admissions prep organization and has evolved into just so much more. And I'm sure, Batjin, even since I talked to you just a few months ago, that you've been up to more, and I can't wait to hear about it. I'm trying to admit everyone here as I speak to the people keep coming into the waiting room. Batjin did his college education over here, actually very close to where I am now in Massachusetts. He was a student at Williams College, which is one of the top colleges in the US. You know, I know if you're in Mongolia, you probably often hear about, you know, Harvard or Yale and other Big Ten schools, but Williams is really right at the top there. And he is one of these few rare people who gets one of these top-notch educations and then goes back to Mongolia and says, okay, how do I apply my education here to make my country a better place? Which, you know, I think is really inspiring. So the education chapter in the book is the longest chapter because it covers early childhood education all the way through university system, as well as education accessibility, comprehensive sexual education and emotional education and arts education. So this chapter, it's really big. So I'm going to need to start today by giving you some background, and I'll have to skip around for that because it's kind of it's normally scattered throughout the chapter, and then we'll turn to Batjin's personal story and work. And like I said, I'll skip around a bit to give you a comprehensive view of things, but I hope it'll still be cohesive today. So just a little disclaimer to start: I am filming the event, and I will put it up online afterwards so that people who weren't able to attend in person are able to watch it later. So at the end of the reading and conversation, we'll open the floor up to questions. And just know that if you are asking a question, either your face or your voice, depending on what you have enabled on your system, will be recorded and put up online. So if you have a problem with that, please don't ask a question. I hope you all still ask questions, but just know you'll be recorded. And so I'll start the reading now. And sorry, I keep admitting people to the room. Hopefully everyone will be in by the time I start reading. But I'll start reading now, and I'm going to start by giving you a bit of a historical overview about education in Mongolia. And I see a lot of Mongolian names in this, so I might be telling you that you already know, but hopefully you find it interesting. Thanks. Okay. When Mongolia came under Soviet influence in the early 1920s, only 3% of its population was literate. As they did in republics throughout the USSR, the communists quickly set to work on the goal of achieving universal literacy. They made quick work of building schools and training teachers, opening the first Mongolian primary school in 1921, and by 1925, making education compulsory and free of charge. Through nationwide cultural education campaigns that used broadly advertised slogans such as master literacy first and then teach others, and move one step forward to improve education. Bit by bit, Mongolians learned how to read and write. In 1968, at the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party's 14th Congress, Mongolia declared that it had achieved universal literacy. Despite a dip in the early 1990s, when children, mainly boys, fled schools en masse to help their families care for their livestock in a desperate economy, Mongolia has enjoyed a near universal literacy rate ever since. Mongolia's near universal literacy rate is due, of course, to its commitment to free education for all its citizens. In the past decade, Mongolia has consistently spent a greater percentage of its national budget on education than nations such as the United States, Canada, Germany, Japan, Russia, South Korea, and many other nations. While on the surface, this may seem to indicate a strong commitment to educational quality, much educational spending goes to addressing Mongolia's unique challenge of educating a sparse nomadic population. Mongolia is the least densely populated country on the planet, and approximately 1/3 of its population is nomadic to this day. Trying to deliver education to people who live great distances apart and move on a regular basis presents Mongolia with obstacles to education that few other countries face. To address this challenge during the Soviet period's rush to education, Mongolians built dormitories for nomadic children. Still today, nomadic parents must bring their children to their designated municipal center at the start of each school year and leave them to live in a dormitory. In the 2017-2018 school year, 517 dormitories accommodated 35,200 children. So from here, I actually go into a very long discussion about the dormitory system, and then we talk about education for access for children with disabilities, but because those aren't Batjin's specialty, I'm going to skip that part and go on to talking about more general issues in the education system. While disabled children struggle to receive the education to which they are entitled, access to education has also become an issue for the broader population of Mongolia as well, especially in Ulaanbaatar. Despite the country's continuously expanding population, Mongolia's spending on education has remained relatively stagnant, both as a percentage of its overall budget and as a real number. This means that while women are given medals and monetary incentives for birthing more children, that's something that we discussed in the feminism chapter, once those children are born, parents will have to fight for them to receive basic education. Put simply, Mongolia does not have enough schools. While rural to urban migration has changed the distribution of school-age students, which has strained the already overextended school system in the capital city, schools throughout the country are struggling to accommodate students. Mongolia is in the midst of a baby boom. In 1998, the number of live births was 49,256. In 2018, it had increased to 78,444. What this means in a practical sense is that parents have to play the lottery to see if their children will be among the lucky ones to receive early childhood education. Each year, parents can enter their children's names into an online system to compete for spaces in public kindergartens. They're informed by text message whether or not their child will receive an education that year. About half of kindergarten-age children will not. While children are theoretically chosen at random, the system is reportedly rife with corruption. Desperate parents pay bribes to underpaid school administrators to guarantee their children's admittance. Winning the lottery, however, is far from the prize situation its name might suggest. Mongolian kindergartens have class sizes of up to 60 children. Class sizes this large are certainly not conducive to learning, and space constraints mean that in most schools, even indoor play activities are not feasible. In an attempt to accommodate as many children as possible, Mongolian children go to school in shifts. Each school runs up to 3 shifts per day, and in some places, the final shift runs as late as 8 or 9 p.m. In most countries throughout the world, children spend an average of 5.5 to 8 hours per day at school or in out-of-school programs. But in Mongolia, the average is only 5 hours. The teachers tasked with managing multiple shifts of overstuffed classroom are Mongolia's lowest paid public servants. So, Batjin, I know that your specialty is in secondary education, not early childhood education, but obviously those problems, come up through the system and grow with the children. But can you talk to us generally about some of the divides that exist in Mongolia's education system, specifically the rural-urban divide and also the public-private school divide?
Absolutely. First of all, hi everybody. This is very cool. I've never attended a book reading. My first ever one is a digital one, so it's really cool. I'm honored that I'm invited. Second, I want to congratulate you on the book. I would love to read it whenever our school opens, whenever I have like time to sleep and stuff. So anyways, in terms of the public and private divide, I think since 2015, what Temujin has been doing is we've been given financial aid. It's kind of like one of the principles that I stole from Williams College, because I went there on financial aid myself and I saw the benefit of diversity, and you had to give financial aid. So with that, we worked with kids from like public schools that you paid zero. And we also worked with kids that paid like $35,000, right? International School of UB. And then there you would see a great divide, but I only saw the divide at the student level. Like the writing would be different, they would wear different clothes, their ambitions would be different. But now I'm in the process of building a middle school and a high school. They're both alternative middle schools and high schools here. And I think now I see this huge divide in terms of teaching, in terms of teachers, sorry. And I think I think that is the greatest difference, because I think the quality of education, the biggest factor is teachers, and Mongolia has very few good teachers. As you said, it's the lowest paid. It's really, I mean, the pay is super low, and very few people want to become teachers, and the ones that do want to become teachers do for very wrong reasons. And I think right now we've been trying to on a hiring spree for the last 4 months, and I think that's the biggest difference between the public and the private sector, because the supply of good teachers is so low. And then with the low supply of good teachers, and the private schools probably have some of them, very few of them, right? I think that would be, in my opinion, very big. Other than that, in terms of like spirit and drive, I actually think public school students are much better. Because I mean, this might be wrong, it's just an opinion of mine, but I think the internal drive for a better life is usually rooted in not having enough, or pain and problems. So public school kids usually have to do way more to achieve even little. So they have much more drive. They're in my opinion, more hardworking and more self-driven from my experience. But then again, my experience is quite limited because we have an admissions process. So I probably only work with very driven students in the first place, right? I mean, I don't know if this is valuable information, but I mean, from this vantage point, that's where I'm seeing. And I think, we have all these programs and curriculums and everything, but the biggest thing is the teachers are so, it's like the sky and the land. Like, I mean, the difference is like, I can't put it to words. The level change that kids have, most of the teachers, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Batjin. That's really interesting, and I think the subject of teacher training. I hope someone will ask you in the Q&A. I don't have it as one of my questions, but I hope someone will ask you about how you're training teachers and kind of what pedagogies you're bringing into that. But for now, I want to introduce everyone more to Temujin by reading about a bit about what I wrote about you. You actually have a very long section in the book because you guys you'll notice if you read the book, some people have like short little quotes. And Batjin's quotes are like very, very long paragraphs because he's a real talker. So you can get a sense of his personality and then from this event and then read about him in the book. So when Batjin and I first met in 2016, he described Batjin Academy as a small nonprofit with big dreams. At the time, the organization was operating out of a co-working space and offering 2 month-long college admission programs, preparation programs. In merely 3 years, Batjin has achieved his dreams and imagined more. Today, Batjin operates its own space with 8 classrooms, a library, a coffee shop, offices, and 2 counseling rooms. In 2016, he stopped offering the program that was in place when I first visited. It wasn't working, he explains. Kids would come in for 2 months, practice for the SAT, and then leave. They were not doing the additional things they needed, like internships and self-development, so they weren't getting into good schools. Today, the shortest program that Batjin offers is a 5-month program for high school seniors who have limited time to apply for college. But their flagship program is now an 8-month-long gap year program. Batjin says that there's a disconnect in the Mongolian system, which is causing more and more Mongolian students to pursue higher education abroad. The majority of Mongolian students who study abroad go to China and South Korea, but Batjin says English-speaking universities hold the greatest appeal. But, Batjin clarifies, we never advocate simply studying abroad. There are a lot of institutions abroad that are no good. Like, for example, I don't think Trump University is better than the National University of Mongolia. That was one of my favorite parts to write. When it comes to foreign college admissions, however, the problem is that Mongolian high school only prepares you for Mongolian universities. And Mongolian universities only require 1 exam for admission, a standardized exam, Batjin explains. Mongolian students are test-centered and most have never volunteered or interned, key components for most Western-style college admissions. But the core issue, according to Batjin, is a fundamental difference in education styles. From public to private schools, these kids, for 18 years of their lives, were never asked their opinions. They never really spoke, he says. They've spent 12 years of their lives being educated, and yet they don't know how to manage their time, how to manage their emotions, and don't know what kind of person they are or who they want to be. In his own case, Batjin says that he was so used to being managed and told what to do that he did poorly in his first year at Williams because he kept waiting for someone to step in and direct him. In Batjin Academy's gap year program, he pushes his students beyond their comfort zone so that they will one day be ready, so that they will be ready once they get to college. For example, the students have to do a volunteer project that is connected to their passion. In order to do so, they need to think hard about what they want to do, find an organization to work with, write a pitch, and then complete the project. It's really open-ended, and that frustrates a lot of the kids. Because of the education system here, kids are used to being told exactly what they need to do to succeed, he says. Batjin hopes that the counseling Batjin Academy offers and the way that he and his staff push their students to truly understand themselves and their motivations will set them up for success beyond just college. The goal is not to get measured or to go to university or to get a job. The goal is to get certain skills, not for academic excellence, but for a purpose like building something, starting a company, or helping people. That's the reason why we learn, he says. Batjin, I love seeing you nodding along to your own quote. You're like, yeah, who said that?
I agree.
I agree. So every time I talk to you, it seems like, okay. So every time I talk to you, it seems like you've expanded your programming and are setting up something new. Can you tell us about Batjin's latest thinking and programming? And also, can you give us an update? Actually, I'm really curious about what the coronavirus pandemic is doing for Mongolian students' college admission process. Can you tell me about how that's affecting you?
Yeah. I think the college pandemic, first of all, we have a lot of students who would not be here. So the coronavirus, from my perspective, is doing a lot of good things for education in Mongolia. First is, well, we have a lot of students who were accepted or were studying at amazing schools in the US back, and they don't want to do the digital learning, so they're here. So we have, I think, a very rare year of amazing talent in Mongolia. So I think a lot of companies should definitely utilize that. The second part, I think the pandemic in terms of college admissions per se, I don't know if it really changed. The amount of applications Tomotion Academy is getting hasn't changed. Our gap program is has doubled the number of students, you know. So from that perspective, not a lot of change, but we do have a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the U.S. colleges will do, whether this will affect the admissions and the way they decide, whether they will be stricter or, you know, more lenient with international students and such. We have no idea. I don't know if anybody has any idea, you know, what's going to happen and how it's going to go. In terms of what we're doing, since talking to you, Tomotion Academy has developed. So Tomotion Academy is an NGO, so we're going to keep the arm of helping these students, an NGO. We actually registered a social enterprise, so a social company that will keep the promise of 40 to 50% of students always on financial aid. And we've started 2 new ventures. And the first one is Tomotion Alternative Schools. We want to build, you know, a different approach to schooling. and we also started a digital company to help our teachers and students kind of better prepare for the future, and now for that matter. And so we're in the midst. It's 6 days from today our school is going to open. So it's crazy. Wow. You know, it's a whole different, you know, because we were an academy, we used to work after school or with students that already were at school. One of the biggest reasons why we're starting this school in the digital company is that every problem we face, you know, we always want to kind of like fix the cause, you know, not the fever. You know, we don't want to be, you know, Tylenol where it fixes the fever. We want to fix like what's creating the fever. And, you know, that's where it began. We used to teach SAT, and that was just a fever, you know, and then we had a 2-month program that was a fever. We have a gap program, and that was still a fever, you know, and we always used to have public school, private school, you know, people who paid extravagant money to people who could not pay even a dime, and they all had the same problems. And then we visited schools in Singapore, Hong Kong, and, you know, we believe, the Tomotion team believe that, you know, it's not just a Mongolian problem. There's something that needs to change with education. And for that, we're building a Tomotion curriculum, kind of like the IB or the AP or the IGCSE curriculum that has a different approach, where we actually bring, you know, students to the center. We leverage technology so we can help teachers kind of do this crazy difficult job. If you think about it, teachers are always kind of labeled or seen as a very low level job where you kind of, you know, kind of like just pass information and you know, check attendance. But it's actually a very, you know, high level manager or C-level job. You have to manage hundreds of kids that are totally different. You have to empower them and teach them to become, you know, better in so many different fields. So it's a very difficult position, actually. It's a very difficult role. And I think we can leverage technology to empower our teachers so we can empower students to live life on their own terms, which is our kind of motto. And if, you know, college could be one of those things, but not everybody has to go to Harvard or Middlebury or Williams or college for that matter. If you want to be a musician, maybe there's a different way, maybe, you know. So how can we kind of unlock and empower these people to live life on their terms, not on what the, you know, Ministry of Education says, or not what I say, or not what their parents say, or not what, you know, public media says, but what kind of their internal desire says, kind of. So that's kind of what we're doing. Coronavirus, to be really honest, I think has been the greatest thing for education in Mongolia. It has woken up so many people, because we've locked down way earlier than the world, right? We've stopped school, like, I think we were the first to kind of like close all schools, and then nationwide switched to digital teaching, right? So all national television started teaching schools, like classes, and then every parent was like, this is what my kid learns. And all of these private schools had to, like, no, for real, like, I mean, all these private schools had to use Zoom, do digital classes, and then their, you know, principals and managers and people actually saw what their teachers did for the first time, because you could record Zoom classes, you could kind of sit in multiple classes at the same time. I think it was a really good thing for education here. You kind of fast forwarded so many schools that would have otherwise ignored it, because before they could do whatever and their revenues would still be the same or more. They could, to be honest, I mean, Mongolian people love education. They have prioritized it so high that it doesn't matter how bad the result is or how poor the service is, they will give it. And, you know, I think a lot of private schools were kind of just roller coasting, and the coronavirus kind of challenged them in a very good way. So I see it in a very positive way. The other side is a lot of kind of poorly run educational places closed down, and I think that's kind of healthy for everybody, to be honest, for the students, for the economy, and you know, for the owner of that business, not that great. So I'm sorry if I'm being too like blunt about it, but I think for the overall good of the people, I think it was good.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Well, you know, if you run education like a business, then in bad times you have business problems, I guess. So getting more, I want to talk more about the idea of kind of a national education philosophy in Mongolia and how it's approached in the past, how you think Mongolia should approach education in the future. So Batjin is proud of what Temujin Academy has accomplished so far, but he's only at the beginning of his process of disrupting the Mongolian education system. Next, he's planning to start a high school so that he can reach students earlier and offer an alternative style education. So we've already mentioned that. Every few years, the Mongolian Ministry of Education changes its curriculum. Usually, explains Batjin, they buy a complicated curriculum developed in the US, Singapore, Hong Kong, or other developed countries. On paper, the curriculum offers exciting things such as time for meditation or student-centered learning, but it's rarely ever implemented. Even if these curricula were implemented, Batjin doesn't believe that they would be the right fit for his country. You're like, yes, this is what I said. I think the government
Somebody
really.
was leaving.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like cheering on your own quote.
No.
I think the government really needs to sit down and develop a simple curriculum that is built for the Mongolian people. What are the skill sets that the Mongolian people need to have in this interconnected world in order to succeed, he asks. We can't model our system on most countries, to be honest. They're just not the same. He cautions that the Mongolian education system is always chasing after the latest content, but without giving real thought to the way it is taught. When I was young, the focus was on learning Russian. Then it changed to English. Now it's programming because it pays well. It's everybody, let's become IT engineers. Mongolia will become a land of IT engineers. They're changing the focus of the school, but they're not changing the way we're taught. As it's going now, we're going to produce people who know all the programming languages, but nothing else. It's a tool, like a hammer. Why do we need millions of hammers? We also need people who can use the hammer. We need innovators. We need people who know how to work as a team. When Batjin thinks about starting a high school, he envisions a school that offers a great education, but that avoids the trapping of Ulaanbaatar's other elite schools. His school won't have a gated campus or its own private state-of-the-art facilities, but rather it will be integrated with the community so that even if his students receive an elite education, they will be cognizant of what life is like for most Mongolians. Our country doesn't have a lot of that stuff, and students need to know that. If they have to interact with their community, they will understand their community better, he says, dreaming of the future. So can you talk to us about what the latest trends in education in Mongolia are, and what are the most important challenges that you think need to be made to educational policy to improve the country's future prospects? I know that's a huge question, but I figure you've been thinking about it.
In terms of the latest trend, I would say is probably digital teaching. We have a very interesting policies set in place right now. Most of the schools now are forced to have physical classrooms for 3 days and digital classes for 2 days of the week. You know, class sizes are limited. We need even more kind of, as you said, the kind of sessions, because we need to divide it up. and we don't have enough schools, and especially in the public sector, in the public schools, you know, we have 70 kids in one class. Can you imagine, right? And then we have like 3 to 4 kids sitting in, you know, on a table for 2, right? So it's not the best for coronavirus policies, where they ask us to be about 1.5 meters apart, right? So I think the latest trend, I don't know if you can say that, is probably there right now, like really current. But in the recent 5 years, I would say IT, a lot of programming, coding has been a huge trend, which is obvious. I mean, whatever position, like whatever profession, or whoever is super rich at that moment, I think turns into a trend, right? Before, why it was Russian, it was because most of the people who knew Russian were making good money, you know, and then English. Now programmers, and you know, Jeff Bezos is rich, so you must do what he's doing, kind of idea, I think. I would say, I mean, and that's, I think, I hope that answers the first question. The second one goes, well, you asked what are the most important changes that you think education policy improve the country. So here's the idea. So our philosophy at Temujin right now, we're building our own alternative school, like a campus that has the community aspect and all that stuff. But we'll also have partnered up with a second school that is actually like going to be a huge mega kind of school in Mongolia, and we are working with them with our curriculum. So the idea is that we want to build this curriculum, so we give it to, you know, all public schools and even private schools that want to use it, because the idea is our curriculum is based on our national curriculum. So we're not bringing in any other country's curriculum. And then the idea is to how can we enhance and empower this curriculum built for Mongolian people, but adjusted for like world problems, right? Currently, a lot of politicians are kind of suggesting that we should like buy the IGCSE program, which is the national curriculum, you know, British national curriculum, and then implement it in all of our schools, which is kind of, in my opinion, ridiculous, because the reason why school is free and it's, you know, public schooling exists is that the country wants to, well, first, you know, educate their people and prepare for the future, and, you know, create national citizens. And it's kind of strange that our country wants to prepare people that think they're British but have Mongolian passports. You know, it's like we can't even get visas to most of these countries. Why are you, you know, creating people that can't speak Mongolian but can't really speak English? You know, they're not really accepted by the Mongolians, but they're not really accepted by the British. Kind of, it's like, it's such a weird mix. And my suggestion would be, how can we double down on human skills? So it's like right now, what are the skills that we want to teach our students? The ability to manage their time, to be creative, to manage stress, to manage emotions, to work as a team. And I think these are the skills that are universal. Whether you're Mongolian or not, you need to be able to communicate through, for example, platforms like Zoom, you know, digitally communicate, write better, and these skills, rather than focusing on what is the best curriculum that England is doing or Singapore is doing, and who got, you know, a really good, you know, PISA score or whatever it is, right? So what that comes down to, what we realized is we researched our national curriculum, and if you read it, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. All of our national schools are teaching English through theater, through music. Apparently, we get evaluated by, you know, reading poems on stage, but we don't. So what happened was, I think the biggest change should not be about curriculum or the plan, which is pretty good. We shouldn't change physics, or we shouldn't change, you know, English. That's probably like quite well developed. But what we should change is how our teachers are trained and developed, right? I think our government should subsidize, put more money in salaries, right, and teacher development. And we should create, I think it should be much more difficult to become a teacher in Mongolia. It's very easy. If you have a bachelor's degree, you can become a teacher in 45 days, 3 months, and it's so easy to become a teacher in Mongolia, right? So I think that should be the change, right? We should not bring in, you know, British curriculums. We should bring in how Finland is training their teachers, right? You know, why is it so hard to become a teacher in Finland, right? what are they doing? What teacher training programs do they have? And I think that should be the biggest improvement to our educational system, right? Because we've organized about 3 teacher training programs. We've had about over 400 applications, teacher applications, and we accepted only 25 in total. And it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. We have a lot of teachers who've taught 10, 15, 20 years, and it's just super outdated, right? And I think we should focus there. Not even facilities, to be honest. A lot of people are changing like facilities, having better chairs and better whiteboards, but it's not the problem. The problem is who's using that whiteboard and who's leading and inspiring our students. It's the teachers. So we need to improve our teachers, support them, maybe run like a public marketing campaign, like a branding campaign, where we try to change the image of a teacher. Because right now the image of a teacher is, it's like nationwide known that believed, at least in Mongolia, that the worst become teachers. Like if you have nothing else to do, become a teacher. That's the image of it. So I mean, no wonder nobody treats teachers well. So that's one problem. The other problem is financial, right? Teachers aren't paid that well. But I figured, I actually went in, and to be honest, that problem is kind of like the chicken or the egg thing. Teachers aren't paid well because they don't have a lot of value. I mean, we run those programs and our teachers don't read themselves, right? Our teachers don't have the skills. So you can't really pay for somebody that doesn't have the skills. So we need to kind of improve the skills so that they can, charge more. And, I think it's a very intricate problem, to be honest. And, but it's one that we should focus. I think, our 80% should be there. The 20% can be on the curriculums and the facilities and, chairs and whiteboards, but 80% focus, effort should be on just improving our teachers, right?
Yeah, and so let me ask you a follow-up. The teachers that you have coming up at this new alternative school, how are you paying them? Like, how are you solving those problems in your own school?
So first of all, I think they're getting paid way more than the market value.
Okay, so there.
One. Second, with our school and the campuses, we're following this policy where we want the teachers to own the school. I think ownership is very important. I think you can't be like a banker. You can't be like it can't be like transactional based. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I teach 4 hours, you give me money. And then the student gets lost in that calculation. So we're also offering our teachers ownership possibilities, which I don't think most schools offer. And then the third one is just extensive, insane amount of training. We're doing 5-day Tony Robbins. We trying to implement like Brene Brown workshops. We're having like empowerment hour book readings every morning for an hour. So we're spending a lot of time kind of trying to train them and kind of improve on that side, I would say. But the second side is we're also trying, our HR is trying new ways. So we're trying to kind of convert people into teachers. So for example, our chemistry teacher used to work for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies here. And she used to work with like Japanese firms and Mongolian firms in creating like nutritional, like liquid powders and like, what do you call them? Like supplements, right? Mm-hmm. And she has a PhD in that. So we're working with her to get a license to teach, and that would be a very different teacher. So it's not like somebody that read a book yesterday and is just kind of passing information. It's somebody who's a professional, right? Our math and IT person was a civil engineer in Japan who had a deep passion to teach. So now he's teaching kind of. That's kind of the way, but we, not every position we've been able to find somebody like that, but I think that's the way we should go. And we want to convert like amazing managers into teachers, for example, and I think, I think a teacher is really somebody who, manages people, and kind of like what Sir Ken Robinson says is quite a good example, right? Like a gardener, right? The flower grows itself. You don't do nothing, you just provide the soil, and if it's too sunny, you block it. If it doesn't have any sun, you provide it, right? So I think good managers do that. Good managers allow people to make mistakes. Good managers scaffold and guide people to learn on their own. Good managers don't talk that much, they listen, right? So these are the kind of things we're trying to implement with our teachers. But it's a challenge. I mean, I'll be honest, I think it's like I haven't been sleeping for a couple of months. It's a big challenge. Also, not also because of the teachers, it's also because probably of my inability to, or my inexperience. It's not like I'm somebody falling from the sky and trying to kind of, lift people up. I'm also trying to lift myself up in terms of, what teaching is or what education is, and like learning on the way, kind of.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you're up to really exciting things, and I can't wait to see what happens with the school. We're going to open up the floor to questions now. So if you have a question either for me or Batjin, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can ask a question. Michelle, are you trying to ask us a question?
Yeah, now I am. I couldn't mute myself before, now I can unmute. So it's interesting because I saw a sponsored ad for Tomojin a while ago on Facebook, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Immediately looking at tuition, I can't afford it for my child. But, for the people who can afford it, this is a great leg up. But that leads me, I guess I'm surprised. I should have maybe expected it a bit, knowing who your guest was, but we're talking about like a really small percentage of what represents education in Mongolia. And this is, I live in Darhan, Batjin, so it's different here. I got my child into a public kindergarten without having to pay anybody. Darhan has structured itself a lot differently than UB, obviously, and the population is smaller. But I had no problem getting her into a public kindergarten. We did not choose to send her to a public school for elementary. And that's because I know what the situation is like, because I have a lot of friends who are public school teachers. It's a disaster. And, when you talked about, coronavirus being the best thing for education here, I know you say that, it's sort of the silver lining side, right? Like coronavirus exposed all of the evils of inequality all over the world, and the first week of lockdown, a public kindergarten teacher, she had to leave her 3 children at home because the children had been, you couldn't take your children to school, you couldn't take your children anywhere. Her 3 children died in a horrible accident in her home in the first week of the lockdown. So I can't look at coronavirus, we learned very early in Darhan how horrible the situation was in terms of how the Ministry of Education was going to handle what needed to be done in terms of public safety. But yeah, the death toll, we have a death toll in Darhan because of the way these solutions for education have been addressed. And as far as, my daughter, for 2 months, she did the TB school. It was awful. She goes to a private school, and a very, very affordable one, but not affordable for most of the people who live in Darhan. But in term, for me, it's affordable. But they had to switch to online schools because people who were saying, who really struggled to pay tuition were asking, what am I paying this tuition for when my child is getting what they're getting in the public schools? But even in my daughter's private school, you still had children, it was still half of the kids who could attend the lessons because most children don't have a laptop or a tablet at home. They may, some of them were using their parents' smartphones, but their parents have to work. So if their parents need their phones at work, they couldn't be at home for afternoon lessons for their child. So like none of those issues have been addressed. by the public schools here. There's no solutions. Now, this is universal, right? Because I have friends in the US who are teachers, and they're saying all the, they have a lot of the same issues in terms of public and private. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot, like, I don't know that it's not the best thing that's ever happened to public education. I mean, but it does, it has lifted the curtain on like all the failures of inequality. But we're, to then talk about like all the failures of inequality in terms of how children aren't well served, then the rest of this conversation shifted to a system of education that serves very few children in Mongolia. We're talking about an alternative school that costs 20,000 tugrik or 20 million tugrik a year, which, that's insane. And it's amazing. I'm so glad, because I was wondering about what the percentage of scholarships was for your school, and 40 to 50% is phenomenal. And I am just,
we're actually about
so
65% right now. So on average, our school tuition is about 8 million. So I think the amount of private, because if you like on the curve, it's about on average 8.5 to 9 million the tuition is. I don't think you can find, it's expensive, but our purpose is through this to develop a way where we can have it affordable. For example, on 12th of September, I'm going to OFS. So I want to partner up with a few departments in public schools to kind of use our curriculum, because this is a very affordable curriculum and I want to implement it in public schools in the future. But like most things, you can't start at the public level and then go up. Yeah, it kind of has to be sustainable from the top and down. For example, our counselings at Temujin, we always used to get criticized that it was expensive and we, tailor to the rich, but it's not. Right? It needs to be financially sustainable. So what we did is, for example, from our academy, right, 55% public school kids, right? We've sent over 200 kids to American universities, right? 55% of that is public school kids. These were people that were never addressed to before. I know it's small. That's why every year I just want to, get it bigger and bigger. That's why our purpose is not to build this one school. We don't want to be Sant or Arslan that does it for 25 years alone. We want to build a curriculum that is accessible, available for everybody. So for example, our digital content, we are creating right, the national curriculum. So we're digitalizing all of that, about 600 videos of content, and that's going to be public, and we're going to release it free. So all public school kids who have bad math teachers can watch our content and work on their math, for example. And that's the truth. We all saw what kind of math teachers they have, right? But in order to create that content initially in a sustainable way, where it's not for my CV, we can't be based on grants. We can't be based on donations, especially in Mongolia, because it's just so not sustainable. But if I wanted, for example, to develop my CV and apply for an MBA program, yes, I would go for all 100% free. I would probably apply for a couple of embassy grants, and then I'll bounce. I'll not be in Mongolia, right? We see a lot of people who are highly educated come talk about education, and we have Nagin, for example, is the minister of like oil. Like, it's like I don't get it. He was talking about education and reforming, and he bounced. Do you know what I mean? So in my opinion, at least, I think a social enterprise, like a social company, is, in my opinion, I'm not sure if I'm correct, is the most sustainable way of actually creating impact, rather than a full NGO that is dependent on donations, especially in Mongolia, because I don't see a lot of people donating or doing philanthropic things for education here. So what we want is, we want to leverage what we did at Temujin Academy, which is we charge. So the reason why it's 20 million is that, let's say there's somebody that pays 80 million for a private school, right? For them, if they get accepted to our school, they'll pay full tuition. With that, we can pay, for example, 3 students from Dachan is coming to our school. I think on average, there should be about 88% financial aid, right? That 88% financial aid is coming from this leverage, because we don't have any donors. We don't have any philanthropy, right? So otherwise, that's the only way we can address people that can pay 100,000 euros, right? 65% of our student body cannot pay $1 million. Can you understand that? So to make a model so that I want to work with that 65%, right? In a way that is sustainable and it's feasible.
So I love, I mean, this all sounds like a really good experiment to me. You know, I'm very much a cynic because, you know, I've been living here, you know, 8 years. I've been, you know, I've taught at some of the schools. I've known a lot of teachers. The experiment of building a public school curriculum is the most exciting thing I heard you talk about. Like, to me, like, because everything else you're talking about is not accessible to me. You know, but
Yet.
In terms of, you know,
Maybe.
well, you know, I mean, I would love it. You know, if my daughter goes to a great school, I
How old is
wanted
she?
to talk about one other thing, and then I'll let someone else.
Oh,
I don't
sorry.
want to hog
Okay.
up the.
I'm sorry for
Q&A.
interrupting. Sorry.
It's okay. The other thing I guess I was wondering was, you know, you're talking a lot about, like, you know, having like business people come in to teach, and that also, as a parent and a person with socialist tendencies, kind of freaks me out. Like, I don't want my child to learn about chemistry necessarily. Like, I'm just using that as an example from someone who works in the pharmaceutical industry. Like, I would rather have my child learn about chemistry from like a really cool researcher, you know, someone who, you know, there's so many researchers, you know, in Mongolian universities, and we have, like, you know, growing programs for you know, that are encouraging research in the universities. But like the idea of like my child learning about any subject in school from like a business perspective, it like, something seems, I mean, I get
It's not
it,
from a
though.
business perspective.
At the high school level, I understand it, and for what
skewing
you're
what I
trying to
said.
do, like, you're trying to prepare people for careers and abroad, but like,
No, for life.
it also feels icky. And just, you know, and you know, you must know, I mean, especially in the Mongolian context, right? Like, just, you know, with the importance of like a career and money and status means in Mongolian society, like,
By life,
somehow
right?
I feel
everywhere.
like this upholds that.
It's very, very
I'm
interesting.
gonna go on mute and let you finish. I'm gonna listen to your answer.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I never said we're going to teach from the business perspective. That's, maybe I explained it incorrectly. I want people that have actual practical life knowledge to teach things, because our students are not going to become researchers. Not everybody is going to be an academic, so you can't only teach from academia. I see a lot of poor people that know nothing about financial knowledge, and they go to people that have practical knowledge about finance, abuse them, right? That. I have people who know nothing about nutrition, but they've learned 6 years about chemistry. They don't know how eggs affect their body. I think that's wrong. 12 years of education, and you don't know how your stomach works, and you have to go to somebody, pay them to explain to you what keto diet is. So that's the idea. The idea is not to become business people. The idea is to create practical knowledge, because it's 12 years of preparation for life. It's not 12 years of preparation for SAT, right? It's not 12 years of education in preparation for college. That's not the purpose of like K-12 education. K-12 education is to give you the fundamental knowledge to live on your own terms in the way you want to live. If that's a musician, I don't know. If that's a businessman, if that's a scholar, if that's a politician, that's the kid's choice. It's not, I will not be on a pedestal and tell people how to live. Like, I will not tell them to be, you know, a mathematician or a scholar. That's that child's choice. What I'm saying is, in terms of our teachers and how we teach, is that I want to teach practical skills. And I'll give you a very interesting anecdote. 2 years ago, I was highly depressed. I wanted to leave Mongolia. I have 2 young children that were getting sick all the time. The hospital was crazy here, and everything was just bad. And I bumped into a 9-minute video of Tony Robbins on YouTube. This is a giant dude that is a life coach, right? And I fell in love with these videos, and I went to his five-day thing in Singapore, because a very cool guy actually invited me and paid for my ticket. Otherwise, it's super expensive. It's about $10,000 to go to this event. Imagine, right? And 5 days of this, where I see all these successful people learning about the most basic things in life, like how their stomachs work, how to control their emotion, time management, all these things that are essential in living life, however way you want to live it, but live in life. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the 5 day, Tony goes, puts his finger like this and goes, hey, this isn't rocket science, right? You guys, you can do it. And I go, it's crazy, right? It's crazy that somebody has to pay, $8,000 to learn the basics of, basic skills of life. It's crazy that you go to the bookstore and the two best selling categories is financial knowledge and time management. These are two things that are so essential in life, but our kids are not taught. I'm not saying turning kids into business people. My example of the pharmaceutical, maybe. I don't know about pharmaceuticals. I think that's a whole different book session to talk about. All I said is that this person has practical knowledge about chemistry and can give real, authentic examples, can give meaning to that kid about why he or she needs to learn chemistry. It's not just like in 3 months, there will be a test, right? It's not taught to the norm, to the standard. It's taught to the kid's self-interest in the future life that he or she will lead, right? If that is to do business, I don't know. But all I meant was practical knowledge, right? I want people that are not only academics, right? And my only question there is, if the researchers were so good at training these individuals and teaching them and preparing them for life, why is it so unequal in the world, okay, where so many people have learned for 12 years, and then just look at the inequality in everything, right? Everybody's trained for 12 years, right? But at the end of the day, very few people are succeeding, right? So I think the system, right, the academics, teaching only academic system has failed, and the results are very clear. It's not my opinion, right? The world isn't all sunshine, but almost everybody's going through this educational system. So we want to change it in the way it's taught and in who teaches them. It doesn't have to be crooked business people in the way, Michelle, you describe it. It doesn't have to be a crooked business person. That's not my idea of teachers. My idea is that if you want to teach physics, I want an actual engineer that can build cars teaching physics, okay? Not some dude that read about physics. I want people that actually do physics, teach physics. So our kids are engaged. They have better examples. Read a book, Michelle, and the examples there are so outdated. These are kids that are using TikTok, right? TikTok. And then people who are teaching Mongolian, making them write letters. Who writes handwritten letters these days? It has to be authentic. It has to be real life. It has to be engaging to these students. So if you have an actual marketeer, for example, teach about, syntax, writing, it's much better, right? So that's just kind of an idea. But then again, this is like, 200-300 pages of curriculum that, we're trying to kind of digest into a bite size. But the idea is I just want people to be able to live after 12 years of preparing for it, right? Just, it's mind-boggling that we're so focused on teaching academics, but why can't you teach about managing your emotion, communication, food, time? These are things that are essential in life. Like if you don't know these things, it doesn't matter if you know the philosophies of physics or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of this one of the ideas. So that's where the chemistry teacher comes from, but it has nothing to do with business.
Thanks so much, Michelle, for challenging us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, normally I do these events and we get a lot of easy questions. So I'm glad that you kind of challenge us a bit. And I think, I hope what you'll find interesting about the book is that in each of these chapters, I tried to spotlight people who are coming at the problem from all sorts of different directions, and whether it's like coming at it from being deeply entrenched in the public university system, or, like Batjin coming totally outside and building this alternative education program. So I've tried to find people who are coming at it different ways, and because we're talking about Batjin today, that's why we're focusing mostly on how he's coming at it. But I hope I was able to offer like a much more balanced perspective in the book. So I hope you'll enjoy that. I know Mike had his hand up. Mike, do you have a question? Okay, Michelle has her hand up now. Michelle, would you like to ask a question?
Hi. Hello. So an actual Mongolian high school student here.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello. So I would agree with the fact that the education system in Mongolia kind of failed us because it is the old way and it has been taught for many generations now. And for me, the current education system basically makes us into, well, it makes us memorize, it makes us do as it says, basically like robots. And when someone malfunctions, they think that person is stupid or like moron, etc. And I do believe that the alternative school is a great thing for Mongolia, as most students are not taught to think outside the box, have different viewpoints, or have any life skills, for example. For some reason, I'm a senior who probably has the same amount of, well, health, biology, chemistry knowledge as a first year medical student somehow. That's how the system works currently. And I have studied in Australia for a bit, and well, the system there is similar to the alternative system, although we had to have classes, but at the same time we did have like cooking lessons or gardening, well, agriculture, sorry. And we had like therapy sessions and etc. And I think those things really helped me like see things from a different perspective when I came back to Mongolia and see the flaw in the system. But at the same time, I do think in primary grade, from 1st to 5th grade, that the alternative system should be like adjusted a little, since in those times, I believe that kids should learn to like sit down and be patient and like not be tempted by things. So that's the thing. The question is like, will the alternative system like change depending on which grade it is teaching?
I mean, absolutely, right? Absolutely. I mean, one of the core concepts and of a good education is to personalize it to the student need, right? Not everybody is the same, and that is just a simple fact. People learn differently. People have, different needs, and at different ages. Right now, it's just seen as all 6-year-olds are the same, right? That's how grades are separated, right? 6,
Yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10. But I don't know. I mean, 2 7-year-olds can be very different, right? So it has to be personalized, and that's where our Tamujan Digital comes in, is that we need really good data on our students, so we can help our teachers kind of better teach. The evaluation system right now is very crude. It only gives like 85B. What does that mean, right? Why is this kid not doing their homework? It can't be just because they're stupid and lazy. Let's look into more data, more details about the student, right? It could be so many different things. So it has to be personalized, right? Personalized at the age and at the personality of the student. Absolutely. So I mean, to be honest, it's very nuanced, and I don't think I'm doing a good job of probably explaining it. But it's alternative in a way where our priority is not the national entrance exam. That's not our resulting goal. We want to measure ourselves with how successful our alumni will be at the actual thing, life, whether they're happy, so we have, I think, one of the very few schools in Mongolia that is developing an alumni office with full-time members that actually, track and follow up with our alumni and kind of do surveys about their happiness and about their, career satisfaction and stuff like that, to see whether, our graduates actually, live a better life. Do you know what I mean? But this is I think, to be honest, it's a long-term thing. It's quite hard to show it in short time frame. But I'm quite happy, and I love it that Michelle asked great questions, because it makes me kind of think. So it's pretty cool. But it always happens, when we started our GAP program, everybody was like, you're making people waste their time. And then we got public school kids entering Dartmouth, Princeton, Harvard, and they're like, hey, you want to join our panel and share how you did it? And it's like, well, it's just a different approach. It truly is student based, and we don't care about the SAT or college admittance. We care about, you know, their quality of life, you know, so they don't have to go to a bookstore to learn about time management. They'll learn it in school. That was the purpose of school, to prepare them for life.
Thanks, Batjin. What other questions do we have out there? Don't be shy. Make sure you unmute yourself.
People might be scared. This guy is very aggressive.
Okay, I have one question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Minj.
Why do students need to study in Temujin? Please give us three reasons about it.
Good question. Why do people need to study at Temujin? I mean, to be honest, I don't think I have a great sales pitch, but what I would say is that if you're interested in, you know, living life on your own terms and learning the skills that, you know, you learn at the job or, you know, by failing multiple times in life, you should definitely take a look at Temujin. But we have a very strong philosophy here of not selling. We're not selling, you know, Coca-Cola or cans. I don't think we should sell the idea of our school. It might fit some people, it might not fit some people. We only have, you know, a seat of 200. Do your research, think about it, you know, compare us with other high schools. You can wait out and see, you know, the results too. But I mean, I think not three, just one reason. I mean, we want to prepare for life, not for standardized exams, not for SAT, not for, you know, common application. That's a tiny component of a fulfilled life, right? So we want our kids at the age of 18 to be able to, you know, to be able to live, you know, and if they choose an academic life and want to go to Williams, they should be able to without having the need to go to places like Temujin Academy, for example, right? So in a crazy way, I want to make the things that we did at Temujin Academy obsolete. Because now every school is copying, you know, I mean, every private school now has an academy, you know, and they're teaching SAT and counseling, and, you know, they're fixing the short-term problem. We want to fix the cause, right? We want to fix the cause so that, you know, you don't need to go to some strange guy like me and learn about essay writing and, you know, meditating and internships and, you know, having your essay fixed. It's why, like, after 12 years of training every day from 8:30 to 4 p.m., right? And then you have to come to me. Can you imagine that? It's just crazy. So, like, I mean, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the answer. Anybody else have any questions out there?
I have one question, just because I know, yeah, Batjin's got some great opinions and he's not afraid to share them. You had talked about, you know, the politicians. So I want to hear you rant on, you know, I guess when you were talking about
You're
it.
trying to get me in trouble, right? I have like.
No, I know. Hey, we got time, right? I want to hear you go off. The thing while you were talking about that, yeah, I jotted something down and I thought, you know, the politicians who are making decisions about Mongolia's public education and the curriculum, which affects the private schools as well, their children don't go to public schools. You know, they don't send, none of their children go to public schools. They go to ISU, ASU, BSU. Yep. They have never stepped foot in one of these classrooms where a teacher who makes 600,000 tugrik a month is trying to teach 70 children and get them to yep. go through the curriculum. They have no grasp of reality in terms of what the average Mongolian parent is experiencing in sending their children to school. So I'm giving you that little gem. Go off. Tell me what you think about it.
I think I mentioned this in the book, actually, Michelle, too. It's like these politicians are, in a show of nationalism, making Mongolian only education in schools and not allowing public school children to learn English, but sending their children to their private schools where they're learning English, and that vastly increases their earning potential as they go forward. So, I mean, that's just one small example. I'll let Batjin jump in, but yeah, I think that's very right.
In all honesty, to be honest, I think Aubrey might know much more details about to be the political sphere. I'm so like in Mongolia at least, because the reason why I say that is I kind of focus on the things that I can control, like politicians. You know, I can complain about them a lot, but what I strongly believe on that side at least is that you know. Their incentive, right, is not aligned with preparing our kids for life, right? Their incentive is a 4-year incentive, right? It's so, I mean, of course their kids don't go to, you know, public schools, but the private schools their kids go to are not great either. Do you know what I mean? It's the whole way of preparing our kids. Look, I mean, look at how we watch, like, look at Netflix, like, look at how, like, the world is just changing at the most rapid pace, and we are preparing our kids in such a poor fashion. What I would say for the politicians is, poor lads. I mean, they're paying premium price for the same poor result, right? Look, I've worked with kids at ISU, ASU, BSU, Arslan Hobby. They all have the same problem. They can't think. They have to wait for somebody above to tell them what to do. They don't know what they want. They don't know who they are. They can't write. These are all these fundamental things that you need to succeed in life, right?
But, also, I mean, again, this is, I worked with freshman students at USC in the film school. This was, 15 years ago. It was the same problem. Like, yes. Kids coming out of high school, like, just, it's not a Mongolian problem. It's
Absolutely.
just, part of it, I would say, is generational. Kids, back then those were baby millennials. And the baby millennials, I was like, how are you going to survive college when you can't figure out how to pay your bills? So yeah, that was 15 years ago in the US, and it's the same thing. So you have a big challenge on your hands. And I do want to say, like, I might have come in with the hard questions. I do want to say, like, when I first saw your ad on Facebook for this school, I immediately clicked through and I thought, wow, Mongolian kids deserve this leg up. So I absolutely applaud you. I am so happy to hear about the percentage of scholarships you offer. Regardless of the quality of the Mongolian education system, all students need this leg up. All students need this opportunity to learn how to excel in a university environment, or not, right? Just in a real life environment where they have these kinds of skills to get forward. I just get nervous as a parent because I don't want to skip all the other stuff. I need the meat. I need the meaty stuff. And I have to say, like, as my daughter being in a private school, it's still very much a Mongolian school. Yeah. Her teacher has been a Mongolian school teacher in the private and public sector for 30 years. She's amazing. And, to watch her adapt to these new circumstances has also been amazing, because I know the Soviet system she came out of, and she's like, oh crap, I have to think differently. So Mongolian teachers are open to it. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do if they can get their hands on your ideas. I'm excited. It's a good experiment.
Absolutely. As you said, I totally don't see this as a Mongolian problem. I also don't see this as a generational problem. I see this as the educational system problem, because the way we're teaching was built for the industrial age. We are living in a completely different age. And the reason why, again, I didn't say coronavirus probably could be, from a good perspective, the best thing, because it made a lot of non-believers, forced them to see that the world has changed. right? To force them that the world is not how it was, 50, 60, 70 years ago, because that's where this education system was. Because we educate our children for 12 years for life, to prepare them for life, for the way of life. And the way of life has just transformed. It's just completely different, and it will continue changing, right? So we have to change to that. We can't change to our comfort, right? The system now is comfortable for me. I'm a father of two. Yes, I would love extremely, specific certain grades, right? You've measured my kid, but those are not good evaluations. It just makes me comfortable, but it's not teaching our kids the most valuable thing. The most meaty thing is the life skills. The academic skills will also not throw away. Of course, you need to know the academics and the academic knowledge, but I think the most fundamental things in life are not being taught, and we want to teach that. I mean, just imagine, just a very easy example. Imagine we trained for something for 12 years, right? And our coach charged us, and it's not money. Do you know what? They charge us the most valuable thing, time, right? Our kids put in their time, 12 years of their life, preparing for this one thing called life. And just, they learn nothing about it, right? Like, imagine going to the gym and paying somebody for 12 weeks and we get no result. You fire that trainer, right? We probably yell at them for abusing our money and time, right? But for 12 years on our kids, the system right now should change, right? But our purpose is not to change the system. That's just the side effect, right? We just want to, try a different approach and, empower our students. And our metrics are life. It's not SAT. It's not college. College is not the answer to life. College is one way. A good college is one way.
As a successful college dropout, I agree with you.
Yeah,
all right. Good night, guys. Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting conversation.
Michelle.
Good night. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, any other questions?
Can I ask questions?
Yes, please.
Is it possible if I practice that on top of my myself? Because there's so many reasons. There are so many hobby or some private schools, but is it possible?
Sorry, could you speak a little louder? Yeah, we had some trouble hearing you. Can you speak a little louder?
It's a technical problem. And is it possible if I practice that or TOEFL by myself? Is it possible?
Absolutely. Of course it is. It's absolutely possible. All the people I know that went to good colleges prepared their SATs on their own because they learned those skills, usually not from their school, but from life circumstance. I learned that skill from not having stuff, from being like a below middle class kid, right? And who had an amazing mom who used to sell her house, to pay for my tuition so I could be at a private school. But I didn't learn from those private schools. I learned from seeing my mom, just hustling. I'm like, okay, I need to hustle, right? I learned to have drive to prepare for that test from there, right? I learned English because my mom illegally immigrated to England, right? That's where I learned English. I didn't learn it from English centers. I don't know anybody that did, to be honest, phenomenally learning English that way. The students I had that went to Harvard now learned it on their own. They made flashcards. They went to free libraries and translated books. It was never because of an expensive program, right? So that's the idea. I mean, I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, Promotion Academy and the operations we're going to do are changing to SAT and college preparation to teacher training programs and parenting programs. So we want to help parents. It turns out that parents are never trained. They're not coached and they're not helped out. Like, I'm a dad of two. It is so hard to be a dad. It is one of the hardest jobs being a parent. And I'm not exaggerating. It's difficult. You're not trained. Making a baby, most people can do it. Probably like a 10-minute venture. But then now, because of that 10-minute venture, you have, you know, a lifetime commitment. So we want to help that. And so we want to make what Temujin Academy did in the past 5 years obsolete. That's you know, it's one of the goals of the curriculum. We want independent people, you know. Look, at the end of the day, this is what I want to say. I didn't catch your name, but this is what I want to say. Sometimes I feel so guilty because some of the things I'm teaching is free on Google. I'm able to teach it because I can read it on Google. Can you imagine that? There's so many people here that are, you know, teaching to study abroad. They're creating apps for it. But why? It's free. It's on YouTube. Why are we charging people that can't speak English or don't know knowledge? It's just, you know, it's not fair. So we want to change that. That's why our 2-year goal at Temujin Alternative Schools is to implement our curriculum nationwide at every public school, right? Our 20 to 25-year goal is to implement our curriculum in the APAC region for about 100 schools, right? So we want to tackle places like, you know, Vietnam, Thailand, and, you know, places here. So we want schools to use our curriculum. And, you know, we don't think it's a Mongolian problem. I think it's the educational thing.
Well, I think actually that goes back to what you're saying, Batjin, about learning time management. So for me personally, when I was studying for the GREs, I knew that I could buy a book for, you know, $20 and teach myself everything that I needed to learn, or I could pay $800 to have a classroom teacher basically manage my time. And because my time management wasn't good, I paid that money so that somebody else would tell me to sit in a classroom and learn during these times and do this homework, when, you know, that's all stuff that if I had been trained properly, I could have done myself and done with a book that I could have gotten out from the library, you know?
No,
So
yeah,
you absolutely can do that kind of studying and training on your own. You just have to think about, you know, it's not about, you know, whether you're learning it or not, it's about managing your time to get yourself to do that. And that's not to discount, I mean, I'm married to a classroom teacher. I think classroom teachers are incredibly valuable. I just think like their value is in something different other than teaching us like rote memorization of GRE words or SAT words.
Absolutely, absolutely. A teacher is such an amazing profession. It's a creative. It's I respect teachers so much, especially the ones that love teaching. And then I just want to, like, you know, make that profession sexy. You know, make that profession something that kids, you know, grow up wanted to become, you know. And there's even sayings in English, right, where they say the ones who can, and the, you know, like the ones who can't teach or stuff like that. I mean, so the image of a teacher is just kind of, you know, gone downhill, and you know, we want to kind of change it up, you know. Like bring the sexy back, you know. So that's kind of the idea.
Okay, what other questions do we have for Batjin or for me?
I have a question. In terms of the book, like, I mean, because I've been thinking about so in terms of ordering the book, getting like a physical copy is almost impossible. Is that what you said?
I've got to check out DHL shipping to Mongolia. Are you guys able to get anything in there right now because of the coronavirus? Because I think that's the problem.
I mean, I've been getting packages from the US from my mom. My mom is in the US, so she's been sending me like packages. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so very short-term solution, you could order it to your mom's house and she could send it over to you in Mongolia. But in terms of longer-term solutions, I'm trying to get a publication deal in place with a Mongolian publisher to do a Mongolian translation of the book. Yeah, so that's in the works. I'm hoping that we'll have that contract signed soon. It's also available on Amazon. You can order it, you know, digitally and look at it on your phone or on your computer or your Kindle. But I'm hoping to get physical copies into Mongolia soon.
I'll make sure to order a bunch for our school, and so people can read. I'm also working with a guy called Dudgon, who's I think in your book too.
Who is that?
He's like a designer. Dudgon, Dulgoon.
Yeah. Is this Life Hack Dulgoon?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, I think what you did is great. I just want to kind of say that I have a meeting at 10:30 also.
Okay. Any last quick question or? Anyone going once, going twice? Okay, let me wrap it up by saying, I think, oh, sorry, Botfire, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, just thanks to the Batjin and the other guys. Just my daughter just started today, just one of the member of this school. And the one thing which we had in our life, I had many mistakes, like failures from my emotional, just miscontrol. That's the one of the advantage of this school, just emotional coercion, to be my daughter would be one of the not life experiences, but just if she would be one of girl, we can control her emotion. That would be one of the best thing. Which he would ignore my mistakes, which I did in my life. Thank you, watching and
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope, with whenever I talk to young leaders in Mongolia, one of the key things is sustainability. And I think a lot of people start things in Mongolia and, either have some success or they hit some obstacles or they get a better opportunity and they go live abroad. But one of the things that I admire so much about you, Batjin, is how you've stuck with it and how you've grown and expanded and have been really self-critical and have said like, okay, this program is not working. All right, we've got to change our tactic. We've got to go after the root cause. And you've continued to grow and develop what you're doing. So I applaud you. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and good luck with the school year.
No, thank you so much. Like, I'm like crazy hectic, but I made sure to make time for this session because I think what you're doing is really, really cool. I would love to help out, and then it's just like, it's amazing. I mean, to be honest, like what you did is also cool. I actually kind of use you as an example so many times with our students. I go like, look at this person. Like, I mean, she's she's a foreigner and she came here and she did it's like, so it's like, really, like, I mean, it's really inspirational, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
No, truly. And then to finish it, I go, and I'll give you one last reason why I think Temujin alternative is important, is that I suck at distant communication. I suck at replying to messages. I suck at replying to emails. I've pissed off board members. I've pissed off donors. I've pissed off my best friends because I forgot the message and stuff. And that is much more important than, knowing maths, it turns out. Do you know what I mean? So I apologize personally for just not being the most responsive and stupid in that fashion. And I want to wish you all the